Every aspiring bodybuilder reaches a pivotal crossroads. Whether to pursue muscle growth naturally or resort to performance-enhancing drugs. In an age when over 10% of male athletes in high school reportedly use steroids, it's easy to forget that authentic, natural muscular development still represents one of the most profound changes in physical culture. Those who choose to remain natural quickly discover that it's not about doing more, but about doing what's necessary and doing it correctly. It is precisely this principle that underpins Mike Mentzer's Consolidated Training Program, the ultimate evolution of his heavy-duty philosophy. For those who understand Mentzer's concept of the indirect effect, the Consolidated Program might not just be a minimalist curiosity. It may, in fact, be the perfect bodybuilding program.
From at least certain perspectives, this program is the perfect strength or bodybuilding training program. If you keep in mind, once again, that the ideal situation is to stimulate all the major muscles of the body with the least amount of exercise possible.
The indirect effect, training the growth mechanism. Mentzer's great insight, one that separates his thinking from nearly all of his contemporaries, was the idea that muscular growth is a systemic event, not merely a local one. What he called the growth mechanism, or indirect effect, posited that stimulating large muscle groups, especially through compound movements, triggers a cascade of anabolic responses throughout the entire organism.
As I said in the tape, your goal is not merely to stimulate growth in a given muscle, but to turn on the body's growth mechanism. Remember indirect effect?
He reasoned that by training the body's largest muscles, the legs, glutes, and back, under high intensity, one could ignite systemic adaptations that benefit even untrained muscles. What exactly are these systemic adaptations? Let's have a look. 1. Myostatin suppression. Myostatin acts as the body's natural muscle growth brake. Studies show that resistance training suppresses its expression systemically, reducing the barrier to hypertrophy across all muscles. Because myostatin circulates in the bloodstream, heavy compound training reduces its influence globally, not just locally. This means a hard set of squats might enhance arm growth, even if the arms were not directly trained. 2. Hormonal cascades. Compound lifts such as squats and deadlifts trigger significant surges in testosterone, growth hormone, and IGF-1, all of which promote recovery and muscle protein synthesis throughout the body. These hormonal surges are the biochemical manifestation of Mentzer's growth mechanism. When properly activated, they convert a single set of heavy squats into a full-body anabolic event. 3. Myokines. Contracting muscles release myokines, proteins like IL-6, IL-15, and decarin, which act as muscle messengers. These molecules influence not only the muscle worked, but the entire body by promoting cell repair, reducing inflammation, and binding myostatin to neutralize its inhibitory effects. The modern discovery of myokines provides the molecular explanation for Mentzer's intuitive belief that growth spreads throughout the system. The most striking validation came from Hansen et al. In 2001, who found that subjects training both arms and legs experienced greater growth in untrained limbs compared to those who trained arms alone. Training the legs created a hormonal environment that enhanced growth everywhere. Mentzer's intuition that muscle growth is a whole body event triggered by high-intensity work on large muscles was confirmed. In short, the indirect effect reveals that true hypertrophy is not a matter of endless local stress, but of eliciting a global biological response. The trigger, training to momentary muscular failure. If the indirect effect is the mechanism, training to positive failure is the key that switches it on. Mentzer's central claim was uncompromising. Only one set to momentary muscular failure is required to fully activate the body's growth machinery. Anything less fails to recruit all muscle fibers, Anything more is redundant and counterproductive.
Only one set of an exercise carried to failure is all that is required to stimulate an optimal increase in strength and muscular size. The last rep is the rep that causes the growth machinery to go into motion.
This idea rests on the size principle, discovered by Elwood Henneman in 1957. Muscle fibers are recruited in an orderly fashion from smallest to largest based on effort. Only maximal effort, true muscular failure, forces the nervous system to recruit the fast-twitch fibers responsible for size and strength. Modern research supports this. A 2020 study comparing single sets to failure versus sets stopping 2 reps short found that hypertrophy favored the failure group. Moreover, a British Journal of Sports Medicine study in 2013 confirmed that 1 set to failure produced equal or greater gains in size and strength compared to traditional 3-set training. But does a single set to failure produce gains over the long term? Yes. Over 7 years, once-weekly single-set training produced 50 to 70% strength gains in 14,690 participants across a wide age range. Published in Research Quarterly for Exercise and Sport, this retrospective longitudinal study is the largest and longest investigation of minimal dose resistance training to date. Participants trained once per week under supervision, performing just 6 compound machine-based exercises, such as leg press and chest press, for a single set each, always to momentary muscular failure. The study provides large-scale confirmation of the very mechanisms Mentzer theorized decades earlier. In reviewing the science literature, Carpinelli and Otto found that single sets produced optimal results in 33 studies out of the 35 they reviewed. Thus, the biological logic of the Consolidated Program is airtight. When one all-out set can recruit every available fiber and elicit systemic anabolic responses, anything more merely delays recovery. Less is more, the logic of consolidation. Mentzer's final years were devoted to distilling training down to its purest, most essential elements. The Consolidated Program emerged as the culmination of decades of refinement. It stripped training to the bare minimum required to stimulate the indirect effect. 2 compound movements per workout, performed once every 7 to 10 days. The program is divided into 2 workouts. Workout A, squats, 1 set of 8 to 15 reps to failure. Underhand palms up pull down, 1 set of 6 to 10 reps to failure. Workout B, deadlift, 1 set of 6 to 10 reps to failure. Dips, parallel bars or machine, 1 set of 6 to 10 reps to failure. That's it, 4 movements, alternated weekly, each chosen for its systemic impact. Squats and deadlifts activate the largest possible muscle mass, while pull-downs and dips cover the major upper body pushing and pulling planes. This ensures every muscle receives either direct or indirect stimulation through compound kinetic chains. Each of these exercises was chosen not just for efficiency, but for their unparalleled capacity to recruit large muscle groups simultaneously, maximizing hormonal and neural activation. Squats engage the quadriceps, glutes, hamstrings, erector spinae, abdominals, and calves, a full-body movement that Mentzer considered indispensable. When performed to failure, they create immense systemic stress and an equally powerful hormonal response. For Mentzer, the squat was the ultimate expression of the indirect effect, the lower body exercise that stimulates the entire body to grow. Palms up pull down. This exercise recruits the lats, biceps, rhomboids, and trapezius, while stabilizers like the abdominals and lower back maintain posture. The underhand grip allows maximal biceps activation without compromising lat involvement, serving as the upper body counterpart to the squat's lower body dominance. Deadlift. Mentzer often called the deadlift the most productive exercise of all, engaging nearly every muscle of the body. It unites the kinetic chain from the feet to the grip, reinforcing the notion that strength, and therefore growth, is systemic, not compartmentalized. Dips. The dip, in Mentzer's words, is the upper body squat. it recruits the chest, triceps, and anterior deltoids intensely, while forcing full-body stabilization. Its pressing motion complements the pulling nature of the pull-down and deadlift, completing the program's balance. By choosing movements that stimulate the greatest muscle mass per effort, Mentzer ensured that each training session maximally engaged the body's growth mechanism while minimizing resource depletion. The Consolidated Program's genius lies as much in what it omits as what it includes. Traditional bodybuilding routines of high volume and frequency fail not because they don't stimulate growth, but because they interfere with it. Critics often claim that abandoning curls, extensions, and flies leaves the smaller muscles underdeveloped. Mentzer disagreed, and science supports him. But these exercises in themselves are redundant if the switch for overall systemic growth has already been hit. As Mentzer astutely pointed out,
Well, remember, the goal is not to see how many sets you can mindlessly endure, but to intelligently, knowingly, rationally, logically do only what nature requires to activate the growth mechanism and no more.
research supports this. Rogers et al. In 2000 found no additional growth when isolation movements were added to compound training. Bottaro et al. In 2013 confirmed that single-joint work added nothing to hypertrophy in untrained men. Steele et al. In 2015 extended the finding to trained individuals. In other words, compound movements hit the systemic growth switch. Moreover, they already fully recruit the arms, shoulders, and assisting muscles. Isolation work does not improve results, it only lengthens workouts unnecessarily. Recovery, the forgotten half of growth. Mentzer emphasized that the body's first priority post-exercise is not growth but recovery. Only after energy reserves and tissue integrity are restored can adaptation occur. If training is too frequent, recovery is never complete, and growth is perpetually aborted.
In order for a training routine to be productive, it must of course stimulate growth. And once growth has been stimulated, it must be allowed to take place. This means that your routine must not be so long that it uses up too much of your body's reserve of resources merely in an attempt to recover from the workout. A perfect routine, then, would, number one, induce maximum possible growth stimulation, and number two, use up a minimum of the body's reserve of resources so that growth can take place once it's been stimulated.
In his final recorded remarks, he noted the extraordinary success his clients achieve by reducing frequency to once per week.
I've got 81 active qualifying around the world, and I keep track of all their progress. Training once every 7 days is almost magic compared to anything else. Now, there are some people who can tolerate even less stress than that. Some people only train once every 2 to 3 weeks.
Thus, the once per week or even once every 10 days frequency of the Consolidated Program isn't laziness, it's biological necessity. As Mentzer famously said,
If I can honestly say I contributed one meaningful thing to exercise, it's what I just explained to you. That as you get stronger and bigger, you don't do more exercise, you do less, because the stresses are growing greater. In other words, a beginner is too damn weak to overtrain. But as you grow bigger and stronger and you're handling 500-pound squats, you can overtrain very easily. So you don't train more as you grow bigger and stronger, you train less, and you'll keep growing.
this inverted logic, though counterintuitive, reflects a deep understanding of adaptive physiology. Growth is a supercompensatory process. Only after the body has not just recovered, but over-recovered does hypertrophy manifest. Scientific and logical validation. In modern exercise science, Mentzer's ideas find surprising support. The principles of mechanical tension, fiber recruitment, and recovery adaptation align perfectly with his prescriptions. Even his advocacy for low volume but high intensity mirrors current findings that single sets to failure can rival multi-set protocols when effort is maximized. Moreover, the Consolidated Program satisfies both the scientific and philosophical requirements of a perfect system. 1. It stimulates the entire body through systemic mechanisms, the indirect effect. 2. It achieves maximal fiber recruitment through training to failure, the size principle. 3. It minimizes energy expenditure to preserve recovery resources. 4. It respects genetic individuality by allowing flexible frequency. These 4 pillars make the Consolidated Program uniquely sustainable and efficient, especially for natural trainees whose recovery capacity is finite. The minimalist ideal, nature's logic. Mentzer's enduring contribution to exercise science lies in his relentless pursuit of logic. He rejected the bodybuilding dogma of more is better and insisted that the body operates by rational, biological laws. To him, a perfect routine was one that 1. Maximally stimulated growth, 2. Minimally depleted resources. In his own words,
a high-intensity program fulfills these 2 requirements of a perfect routine. We know with absolute certainty that high intensity of effort is a requirement for building size and strength. And since a high-intensity routine must be brief, it will deplete a minimum of the body's reserves. That makes sense, as the less time you spend engaged in training, the less reserves or resources you use up.
This minimalist paradigm not only aligns with scientific physiology, but also with philosophical elegance. The Consolidated Program is not merely efficient, it is beautifully sufficient. Conviction over validation. Despite skepticism from the mainstream bodybuilding establishment, Mentzer's faith in his method never wavered. If there is one overarching theme in Mentzer's final years, it is conviction. He did not seek validation from peers or champions. Heavy Duty's truth, for him, rested not in popular opinion, but in logic, science, and empirical results. In an interview with bodybuilding journalist Peter McGuff, Mentzer was asked if Dorian Yates' use of heavy-duty principles to win Mr. Olympia gave him a sense of validation.
But does it give you any sort of a buzz, maybe if we see Dorian this year or next year come out and be, head and shoulders above everybody else? And the sort of validation of your principles, would that give you a personal buzz, or does it give you a personal buzz now?
Well, I'm fully convinced now, all the way down to the root, that this stuff is valid. I can prove it to anybody who's willing to listen. I told John Little recently that I have no doubt that I could go in front of the Royal Academy of Science and convince every one of them, using logic and presenting the evidence, that what I have here is the one and only scientifically valid approach to training. I have no doubt about it. I could convince anybody.
Yeah.
If they're willing to listen. I've had many people who were willing to listen, and they were a little bit skeptical to begin with, but I convinced them, and they tried it. They used it, and they succeeded.
Yeah.
I get up to 50 phone calls a day. I do up to 5, 6, 7 phone consults a week, and these people all call me back in the course of the year, and they're all making satisfactory progress. In many cases, they're ecstatic.
Yeah.
Where they hadn't been making any progress at all, they're now making progress on a regular basis, even every workout.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking for that kind of validation. I'm convinced.
While Dorian Yates' endorsement certainly helped spread the word, Mentzer saw it less as validation than as a demonstration that the principles of his method were universally applicable. For him, the steady and often dramatic progress of his many clients was sufficient proof, alongside the unassailable logic that underpinned heavy duty. For Mentzer, the Consolidated Program was not a compromise, it was the logical endpoint of exercise science. The perfect program. For those who understand the indirect effect, Mike Mentzer's Consolidated Program stands as the perfect bodybuilding program. It embodies the harmony between stimulus and recovery, intensity and brevity, science and logic. By training the body's largest muscles to failure, the system triggers a systemic anabolic response that radiates throughout the organism. By limiting exercise to only what's necessary, it preserves the body's finite recovery resources. And by training less as strength increases, it aligns perfectly with the biological law of diminishing returns. MENTZER'S legacy is not just a workout routine, it's a philosophy of rational efficiency. The Consolidated Program proves that for those who understand the indirect effect, the path to maximum muscular development is not through excess, but through essence. In the end, it is perhaps the closest thing to perfection that bodybuilding, grounded in both science and reason, has ever seen.